I couldn't agree more. That's the reason came out from behind my desk about a year and a half ago, because I was just shocked what the last administration did to us. This is the biggest deficit that we've had when we're not at war and not in a recession. 6.7, 6.8% of GDP, and they just blew out the spending. And now President Trump has a plan to bring it down slowly, and it's what I call we're going to reprivatize the economy.
So there is the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, talking about the privatization of the economy. Real quick before we get to our next guest, because this is breaking news. We just got done speaking with former Senator Jim Talent. Real quick from Fox News, Ukraine on Tuesday accepted a deal put forward by the Trump administration during a meeting in Saudi Arabia and a step forward for securing a ceasefire and an end to its war with Russia. Marco Rubio told reporters, quote, "We'll take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes." So that was some development in the course of one commercial break. Wow, couldn't have planned that better. Now let's fix the economy in one break with Taylor Riggs, who joins us now, co-host of the Big Money Show on Fox Business. You can follow her on X at Riggs Report. Taylor, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us here today.
Thanks for having me.
We just had a lot of progress. We're working on world peace here in the 1 o'clock hour on the Annie Frey Show. We need to get that economy going and firing strong. I wanted to talk to you about the privatization of the economy. I think that there are a lot of brand new economists out here who are watching, especially when the stock market is always in that little red box in the corner of the screen. Mm-hmm. Taylor, walk us through what the administration is trying to do right now.
Yeah, the best way that people have explained it to me is when you have a patient on life support and you think this economy has been on life support via all the public government spending, when you take the ventilator or the life support off, there are some wobbliness to it until that patient learns to breathe and walk on their own. And that's what we are doing with this economy. I think the president is trying to get us off the life support of just public spending, public hiring, and throwing money after everything, and trying to say, hey, look, there is going to be a transition period, but eventually for this economy to stand up on its own, we have to reprivatize this entire thing that we're doing. So it is absolutely a transition period, especially when you take a look at the markets last week, yesterday, and a little bit today, where there certainly is some uncertainty. But I think the president has done a good job when he says, bear with me. This is going to take some time, but the only way to do this in the long run is to get the private sector much more involved. And unfortunately, we're competing with countries like China, where they think in 100-year terms. They don't think in 2-year election cycles. So they have the ability to do the hard things without the political fallout. We always don't have that luxury because every 2 years there's a midterm or an election. Mm-hmm. And so I think they're trying to do this, but also this administration has to be careful that there are midterms in 18 months, right, next fall. And so, 1 day, 1 week, 2 weeks in the stock market doesn't worry me. But if you're starting to see some businesses just say, hey, we're feeling a little bit of uncertainty, or consumers are starting to pull back, you don't want to see that for prolonged periods of time.
So I think it's smart. I appreciate you highlighting how President Trump, he didn't say, I'm going to implement, my vision for the United States economy, for the privatization of it, and it's going to be great immediately. He has been very open and honest about, listen, in order to get from point A to B, we're going to have to move through some obstacles, and it's not going to be the easiest thing. Do you think that what is occurring right now, this was part of the understanding when the Trump administration began to implement these economic policies, that this is what they expected?
Yeah, I think some economists and those on Wall Street might be a little frustrated at the messaging. I've been hearing a lot about tariffs, and I'm not hearing enough about tax cuts. Trump 1.0 was so successful because it was tax cuts and deregulation that reignited the economy to withstand tariffs that the president views are needed in the long run to bring jobs back from China and overseas and to just play by the fair rules. So if tariffs are a tool to get there, I think the market's with him on that. But we're now sort of waiting for the good stuff, right? The tax cuts and deregulation. The good news is we are looking at a continuing resolution bill, which they want to pass through September, and then they can then use that as a jumping off point for tax cuts. The other good news is the price of oil has come down like 15%. It's under $70 a barrel. So you should see oil immediate at the gas pump start to be cheaper. And the president has said he wants to bring down grocery prices on day one. And obviously it's not that simple. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And the cost of bond yields are coming down, which is good because that slowly but surely will infiltrate itself through the system to bring down your credit card rate, your auto rate, your mortgage rate, something that spiked almost food prices were up about 20% under Biden in the last 4 years. So you're starting to see some signs, but businesses and the American people, I don't know how patient they will be in terms of wanting the pocketbook to really start to feel better.
Yeah, we're speaking with Taylor Riggs, the co-host of the Big Money Show on Fox Business. Naturally, people want what they want, and they want it now. And patience is a difficult thing to muster right now, especially when you're talking about people's individual pocketbooks. You're talking about gas prices, grocery prices, mortgage rates, all of these things that are very tangible to the American consumer. And, I think if we're talking about privatization, which is what we heard Bessent say, we know that that's what Donald Trump is going for. I think sometimes the way to define a good way to define something, for me to understand it, is to define what the opposite of it is. So let's look at a contrast here. It appears as though the Trump administration has been advocating heavily for we're at a fork in a road. We're $37 trillion in debt. If we keep going here, that number's going to get bigger. It's going to collapse the whole thing. We need to go a different direction. What is the opposite of privatization for the United States economy?
It's staying in the due course. And I can tell you the due course isn't working for me. $36 trillion in debt is unacceptable. That is the beginning of the end of empires. And I don't say that lightly or say that to create Armageddon. Having wartime era deficits when we are not at war, when our economy is supposed to be strong, is unacceptable. So everyone has explained to me, well, you can't cut things like Social Security. And I'm like, well, I understand. We're not trying to cut it. But the administration, in order to save Social Security for your children, you have to start to get the fraud, waste, and abuse now. Otherwise, that's going to be bankrupt in 20 years. So in order to actually make it solvable and in the long run, you have to start looking at these things now. The way to make it healthy is to start cutting now. Otherwise, it's going to be non-existent. I've already baked into my forecast, I'm in my mid-30s, I'm never going to see a penny from Social Security. It's not going to last that long. So if I want a shot at it, we have to start looking at it now, or it won't even be around for me.
Yeah.
So that's the message they're trying to get out. Not to sound Armageddon, not to sound alarmist, but in order to make this economy stronger, you have to start cutting. And we don't have an option. And I think the frustration is Republicans have been warning about debt deficits for 20 years, and it hasn't ever been a bad thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what do you mean? We just keep adding debt. I haven't seen the problem in my family. And so it's sort of been a crying wolf situation. But now I feel like it actually is a crying wolf situation when you're looking at these numbers. I mean, when you're in D.C. and you want to throw around a couple $1 million in budget cuts, they laugh at you. They're like, that's a rounding error.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary. I'm required to balance my budget in my family, in my household. Why do I have a government that, by the way, I'm paying for with my tax dollars that isn't required to do the same? And it's like more and more Americans at the election poll finally were like, this doesn't feel sustainable to me.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I know many of our listeners right now are fist pumping in their cars and at their office desks right now, Taylor, listening to you talk in that way.
But it's going to be hard work in the transition. This isn't going to be easy. We are rejiggering the entire economy.
The message that we heard from the Biden administration for 4 years was they were touting the economy. They were bragging about the economy. I didn't feel it with my family and my 4 kids.
Correct.
It was very difficult.
Because it was all public government jobs.
Well, and
government spending.
Is that part of the contrast between, Biden's economy? It's great, at least for the Democrats. They were very proud of it. Is that all government jobs? Is that a huge part of this contrast between Donald Trump saying, let's privatize this sucker?
Yeah, let's have the private workforce support enterprise. And, guess the best example I heard is from Meta, the owner of Facebook, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
An executive over there said the U.S. has created six different trillion-dollar companies in the time that Europe has created $1 billion company. You know why? Because America believes in free market, capitalism, low regulation, and the private sector. Europe is weighed down by public government bloat and all of the massive regulation. So to me, that tells me very quickly, if you're on Apple, Amazon, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, those are all American companies because we are still the best place to do business. But those businesses are private enterprises. Those businesses is not the government sector. So if we want to avoid becoming Europe, and I think we all do, fiscally and financially and sometimes more socially, we've got to reverse the trend. So, and I think that's where you also have all of this money being, the stimulus checks, believe me, they felt great in the moment. I didn't know why I was getting them. I had a job. My income didn't change. I was still getting them. And I thought, okay, this is fun. But all of that free money, eventually you have to go home and pay the piper. And we're experiencing that now with the 20% inflation and now trying to right size this economy. And it's hard and it's not going to be easy.
It isn't. It isn't easy. We're not in the middle of the easy part of this, but Trump's promises have been like, just wait till we get to the other side. So I think we're all just still saying, all right, at this point, we trust the process. Taylor Riggs, it's a pleasure to have you on our show with us. Thank you for visiting. We hope you'll come back.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. And don't check your 401k today.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's
don't sell.
That's really great advice. Thank you, Taylor. We appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.